Hello and welcome. My name is Anne Ninnas and I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden, where I work as Reiki teacher, yoga teacher, I keep hypnosis sessions, and I'm also a board member of the Swedish Reiki Association. Today, I'm happy to share that I have invited Frans Stiene for a conversation about Reiki. And this is a part of a series of Reiki Talks where I invite inspiring Reiki people to share their experiences within Reiki. So please enjoy. So I'm very happy to have Frans Stiene with me today. So could you please introduce yourself?
Well, thank you for inviting me, first of all. It's really great. Yes, my name is Frans. I've been teaching the system of Reiki worldwide now for over 25 years. It's my main profession. I do profession because I don't see it as something else. I'm also the author of quite a few books. Here are two. This is The Way of Reiki, and here we have The Inner Heart of Reiki. But I've written more, so these are just two. Yeah, I like teaching specifically. Also, I really like teaching from a traditional approach. And so since 2001, I've been to Japan quite a lot. And since 2012, I'm training with a Japanese priest. And that really has opened up my horizon about the system of Reiki, where it came from, where we can see a heritage of Japanese spiritual teachings and practices. And yeah, that's me really in a nutshell. I live in the Netherlands, but I teach worldwide. I also lived in India for 2 years. I lived in Australia for 20 years. So
Mm,
yeah.
yes. Could you please tell us about how you discovered Reiki from the first beginning?
Oh, yeah. I had some physical problems since I was a kid, like back problems and stuff like that. So they put me in plaster, and my back was always hurting. So I got these nice little painkillers. And the doctor said, we can't do much for you. You just have to get lots of physiotherapy and take those painkillers, and that's about it. So in my late 20s, the pain became a lot. And so when I was 30 and we're kind of moving to India, we're traveling around there, I really decided that I needed to do something for myself. And then I met up with a local healer in Ladakh, it's in the north of the India in the Himalayas. And after that, when she did whatever she did, I wanted to buy books on spirituality. So I bought some Buddhist books and I bought some yoga books. And between one of those books was a book about Reiki. And I remember sitting on my bed somewhere in India doing some hands-on healing on myself. Like, well, this is quite interesting. And then about maybe 6 months later or something, I met an English Reiki teacher in Kathmandu, where I was living at that time. And we did Reiki 1, 2, and 3 with him. And then for a year, we had a Reiki center in Darjeeling in the Himalayas and did a lot of volunteer treatments on the local community. And yeah, that's a little bit in a nutshell again.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you think is the most powerful aspect of Reiki?
Well, for me, I mean, I think this is really it's the Reiki precepts. I mean, that's the beauty of it, that they are behind me in Japanese. And so for today is really focusing on the present moment. The past is gone. We cannot really change anything in the past. We can work with it, but we cannot change it. If we could change it, we could change the world wars and all the other things, but we can't. The future hasn't happened yet, so we can also not do anything with that. So the present moment is really today. Yeah. So Mikasu was saying today, and then that we can soften our anger, soften our worry, that we can be grateful, that we can be true to our way in our being, and that we hopefully through practice that we can be in a state of compassion and kindness, what doesn't change according to circumstances. And for me, that is the most important element. A lot of people within the system of Reiki, when you talk about Reiki, they think about hands-on healing. But in fact, traditionally, the system of Reiki was a practice for your own personal self-development. And from that, the byproduct of that was hands-on healing. And we can also clearly see this in the Reiki precepts. It doesn't say anywhere healing of a physical issue. It doesn't also see hands-on healing, but it's all about a state of mind of the practitioner in today's life. Also, we see the word today. It doesn't say on a meditation table or on your meditation cushion, but in fact, everything we do today. And for me, that is the most profound element of the system of Reiki, that we have to bring it. It has to be included in all we do today, no matter if I'm at work or I go for a coffee or I talk to a friend or I give a Reiki class. And I think specifically as a Reiki teacher for myself, I need to make sure that what I teach in a class that spills over in my daily life. If that doesn't spill over in my daily life, then my own personal practice has not been so successful and beneficial.
Mm. Talking about Reiki teachers, what do you think makes a good Reiki teacher?
I think the most important thing is the direct experience of being Reiki, and that comes, Mikosui created this wonderful system of the system of Reiki. And first of all, the base of that is the Reiki precepts. This is, in fact, we can also see this in Zen Buddhism. There are certain precepts, and in Tendai Buddhism, etc. And it doesn't mean we have to become a Buddhist, but the Reiki precepts in reality is a description of being Reiki. And Mikosui used another wonderful word for that in Reiki 3. And if we translate it as a great bright light. And so if we only talk about it intellectually, then that is not so good. So the qualities of this great bright light is in reality the precepts, and this is our true self, our essence. So the more we embody this in our daily life, then that really makes a good teacher. We can, of course, be a parrot and repeat whatever our teacher told us and like this. This is why Mikosui put very specific meditation practices, very specific symbols and mantras, hands-on healing, Reiju or attunement initiation, and then the Reiki precepts. And when we practice this as a teacher, then hopefully that we embody this in our daily life. And so that we are an example for everybody else. So if as a teacher, I can teach a great Reiki class, but if after that I'm still very jealous, I'm not very kind, I'm angry all the time, I'm worried all the time, then that actually shows that we haven't really embodied it. And also, Mikosui, here's a wonderful thing. In the Usei Reiki Gakkai, it's a traditional organization in Japan, they hand out certain booklets, and in one of those booklets, there is a question and answer with Mikosui. And one of the answers, Mikosui says that the state of mind of Kami and Buddha is the most important principle. So here we have Mikosui's own words saying that the most important thing, the most important principle within the system of Reiki is the state of mind of Kami or Buddha. And then we can ask ourselves, okay, what does Kami mean or what does Buddha mean? And then we can very simply say that it's a state of mind in all we do today of no anger, no worry, being grateful, being true to our inner being, and being compassion. And a compassion what doesn't change according to circumstances, because most of the time our compassion changes. One moment I'm very kind to you because you say kind things. And the next moment you say, Frans, I don't really like what you teach. And then I'm not being kind to you anymore. So that's a kindness what doesn't stay the same. It changes rapidly. And therefore, the more we embody this and being Reiki, and seeing also that Reiki is not something outside of ourselves. So, what is this Kami or Buddha? Is something we are, is not something hangs outside of ourselves. So, in these traditional associations, we see really great teachings. And even now, there was a book being published just recently, finally in English, and it's been out in Japanese for a long time. And it's a book from the 1933. And also within that, we can see that this author, Tomita, says, oh, Reiki is inside of ourselves. It lays in the hara or dantian or tanden, whatever word we use. Even Mrs. Takata pointed this out already in the 1930s too, that we have to go within, we have to concentrate, we have to go meditate and let the Reiki come from within ourselves. And this is so important, I think, as a Reiki teacher to embody and to also teach and to express this, and particularly in our daily life. For me, we cannot constantly channel Reiki. It's impossible because then we constantly, oh, I'm going like this, I'm going like this. And then while I'm talking to someone, I constantly need the need to channel something. But if I'm being it, then it's with me all the time. And again, we can see this in the precepts. We being grateful. We're not doing gratefulness. We're being true to our way in our being. We're being compassionate and kind. We're not doing kindness or doing compassion. So Mikosui pointed out a lot of things about being Reiki in a very traditional way. So for me, that embodiment, I'm raving on here, but for me, I think it's really important. I actually was out yesterday and with a friend who doesn't really practice Reiki, but she asked some questions. And she said, Frans, I know some people who claim to teach Reiki, but their own world is a disaster. Their own life, their own the way they communicate with people is really full of anger and worry. He said, that doesn't make any sense. What do you think? And I said, yeah, I agree with you. But we see this also with yoga teachers or Tai Chi or other teachers where there is not an embodiment, it's just the intellectual understanding. And so traditionally, like my teacher in Japan, who I trained with since 2012, this priest, he's very, very specific and he trains you and he pushes your buttons to see if you have that embodiment or not. And he says, Frans, you can teach this, but not yet this because you haven't really mastered it yet. And these days we kind of buy certificates and then we're not ready sometimes. And we can also see this within practitioners who unfortunately might not be ready to do hands-on healing on other people. How maybe I don't try to offend someone, but it is. If we're not ready, then we should not do hands-on healing on other people, or we should not teach. Else, in these traditions, they call it the blind leading the blind, and we have to be very careful for that.
The priest you're talking about, your teacher, is it a Reiki practitioner, a Reiki teacher, or is it a Buddhist teacher?
He's a Buddhist teacher, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's done a few Reiki classes with Japanese Reiki teachers just to see what they were teaching. But the interesting thing, for example, very simple. The word today, we can see in many Zen teachings, we can see it in Tendai Buddhism, we see the concept of anger and worry and fear in all of these teachings, the teachings of compassion. Then when we look at, for example, these meditation practices, like for example, you have the meditation practice of Joshin Kokyoho. There's meditation practices like this in Tendai Buddhism. What almost 90% mirrors exactly the same meditation practice. We can see dry bathing, very similar mirrors, very specific practices. We can see this in Zen, we can see it in Tendai Buddhism. Then, of course, when we look at the symbols and mantras, we can clearly see these concepts and ideas in Japanese Buddhist teachings. Reiju, very clear. We can see that as kaji in esoteric Japanese Buddhism. So Mikusui didn't invent the system per se and created lots of new symbols and mantras and concepts. He borrowed from existing practices, what he was practicing himself. So, for example, we all know the story that Mikusu was on Mount Karama for 21 days. Well, he wasn't doing a picnic, right? He was actually practicing some serious practices. At that time, Mount Karama was a Tendai Buddhist mountain. So if you go now to Mount Karama, it's very different because it's not a Tendai Buddhist mountain anymore. And at Mikusui's time, the lay monks and nuns from Mount Hiei, the Tendai main mountain near Kyoto, near Mount Karama, they were practicing on Mount Karama. And these 21-day practices were very challenging. So before you could do a 21-day practice, you have had to done the 7-day practice, you have done the 3-day practice, and you were already a lay monk or nun, right? If you've done 21-day, then you could do the 100-day, or if you're really keen, then, and if you were allowed, you would do the 1,000-day. So Mikusui borrowed these very specific practices, meditation practices, healing practices for, first of all, yourself, and then the byproduct was hands-on healing on other people. And for example, also in the 1933 book, we can clearly see this. Tomita also stated that traditionally hands-on healing was a byproduct and that Reiki was, first of all, for yourself, for your own well-being. Because I cannot help other people if I'm still full of anger, worry, jealousy, fear, anxiety, if I don't know how to be kind to other people. Very, very difficult.
Okay, yes. And what is your point of view regarding the difference between more traditional Reiki and some Western Reiki forms? Like we have plenty in the West, you know.
Of course. I mean, some people say that all roads lead to the mountain, but I don't always agree with this because there's also roads that go around the mountain. And so even in Japan now, we have very modern Japanese Reiki teachers who, for example, see that Reiki is something outside of ourselves. We have to channel it. Uh, all of those kind of elements is a very modern intake. And who also mainly their focus is hands-on healing on other people. But again, I cannot help other people if I don't know my own well-being, right, is very, very difficult. So for me, ultimately, no matter if we talk about modern or traditional or Japanese or Western, the most important thing is, and we can all test this ourselves, and this is, I think, Mikusu was wonderful, that the foundation is the Reiki precept, right? And so no matter if we've been practicing for 1 week or for 30 years, can we honestly say to ourselves, actually, I have softened my anger. I'm less angry in my daily life. I'm less worried. I'm less fearful. I'm less jealous. I feel more and more grateful for everything what happens in my life, not just the good things, but also the not so good things. Do I feel I'm more true to my way in my being? And do I feel that my compassion has become more and more stable? So no matter if the person has been unkind to me or treated me unfair, that I can maintain this equilibrium of compassion and kindness. Then we can actually say, my practice is bearing some fruit. I always say in a class, to feel energy, it's not that difficult. Don't do this at home. Just stick your hands in a PowerPoint, you feel energy. If you want to see colors, stars in your meditation practice, also not that difficult. You grab a metal bar. Also, don't do this at home and you hit yourself on your head. You see wonderful colors, stars, maybe for days. But this is easy, right? The most important thing, and this is why Mikasui, the precepts are so important. He doesn't say feel energy, judge it, label it. He doesn't say see angels or ascended masters or colors. No, he makes very specific points because even if I could feel a lot of energy and I might start to see and feel things, what's a byproducts of our practice, then maybe I actually could become more arrogant instead of being more humble and kind and grateful. Look what I can do. Look what I can see. I'm special. I'm the teacher. Only I can give it to you. Like these elements is not so beneficial. Not so beneficial for you as a practitioner or teacher because that means it's very unstable. Because then if someone says something to you, you quickly get angry and worried and fearful. And we all know this. If I'm angry all day, I feel tired. If I'm worried all day, I feel exhausted. If I'm kind and open, life becomes way more easier. So for me, this is the most important element, no matter which system we practice, that as a teacher or practitioner, that we can actually genuinely say and look in the mirror and say to ourselves, yes, I feel I'm honestly saying this. I feel less anger, less worried, etc. And that already in itself frees up a tremendous amount of energy, tremendous amount of inner joy, inner happiness. And that will have an effect on my local community who I come in contact with every day because I cannot do hands-on healing on everybody who I come in contact with every day. Impossible. But I can radiate out this inner luminosity, this being Reiki. I can radiate this out in all I do, no matter what. Today, I can train myself to do this. And that, for me, is really what Mikasui was talking about. The mindset of Buddha or Kami in our daily life.
But anyway, going back to the question, as you are teaching more traditional Reiki, as you say, but what is the difference then to not traditional Reiki? I mean,
Well, I mean, this is again, for example,
yeah.
I think there's a big difference of channeling Reiki or being Reiki. Channeling means we see something here and it has to come from through me and out in something else. So it means we see ourselves as separate. Actually, Hiroshi Doi, a great teacher in Japan, and he found some little scripts and teachings of Mikusui. And one of them, Mikusui says, everything in the universe is Reiki. That means I am Reiki. And this is, again, what Mrs. Takada said, what all the, in the Usui Reikida Gakkai, we can see this. We can see it in that wonderful book from 1933, where it says, look within is not outside of yourself. This we can see this in Zen Buddhism, in Tendai, in Shugendo. All of these traditional Japanese teachings say, don't look outside of yourself. Particularly, Mikusui talked about Satori or enlightenment. If we look at for outside of ourselves, we can never find it. Okuden, for example, means hidden or inner teachings, means what is hidden inside of you. So that's a big difference. Already, I teach from straight away from level one, you are Reiki. We're already interconnected. Another big difference is we don't have to connect to Reiki because we are it already. I don't need to connect to my breath because I'm breathing already. I don't need to connect to my heart because it's beating already. If it doesn't beat, I'm dead. So if I say I need to connect to something, means I feel very separate. So it's the same, therefore, for distance healing. It's not about sending something from here to there, but it's about realizing that we're all interconnected and we're all one. And this, for example, in Reiki 2, where we have these symbols and mantras, and it's another big difference in a lot of these modern teachings. They are used very externally, but traditionally, these mantras and symbols were pointers to your inner true light, your true being. And if we translate these mantras, or if we look at where these symbols came from, we see exactly this. We see, again, Mikasui said in his question and answer thing, the most principal thing is the mind of Kami and Buddha. And when we look at these symbols and mantras, they point to what your state of mind of being Kami, the state of mind of Buddha nature. And of course, we don't have to become a Buddhist, but it's just a name. Don't get caught up in that name. It's just the qualities of love and compassion, what doesn't change according to circumstances. So I think also a lot of modern teachings only focus on hands-on healing. But for me, hands-on healing, and again, all these traditional teachers say exactly the same thing. In fact, there were priests and priestesses in Japan who did hands-on healing on people because of what they rediscovered within themselves. They realized, oh, that energy emanates from my whole being. And so therefore, and so it's very important to realize this. And so for me, these are quite big differences. And then we can also see if I don't realize this inner luminosity within myself and I start to do hands-on healing on other people, then maybe I start to have fear. I need to protect myself. After about a year or 2 years or 3 years doing it, a lot of these practitioners give up. Why? Because they feel exhausted. They feel they've given away their energy. And so these are actually misunderstandings because, first of all, we have in the precepts, do not worry. So all of these are based on worry, protection, fear. I'm giving away something, I don't have it. So now we already know we haven't understood the Reiki precepts. What is the foundation of the system of Reiki? So for me, these are really big differences.
Thank you. Talking about the symbols, I know that you are chanting. You are, but there are several traditional Reiki systems where you don't. Could you
Yeah.
let us speak a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, when we look at, we have symbols and mantras within the system of Reiki. There's two very specific symbols, and then there's two mantras. Then there's two other symbols, what is actually Japanese kanji. And so that Japanese kanji is the same as the mantra. So these mantras, the first of the first two in Okuden, that is not the name of the symbol. Sometimes we say, oh, the first mantra is exactly the name of that symbol, but it's not the case. There were two separate elements. And this was because some people are very visual and some people are very auditory, but they do exactly the same thing, right? And if we look at these symbols and these mantras, they look different, but they are actually pointing to the same thing. So when we translate these mantras, for example, they're just Japanese phrases. When we translate them, we can see that traditionally they point to the same thing. What is this same thing? Being Reiki, being this great bright light, the embodiment of the precepts. And of course, mantras, the word mantra actually means protecting the mind. And then we have to ask, what is it protecting the mind from? From not getting distracted by the past, by the present, and by the future. So when we recite a mantra in all these traditions, and particularly maybe if you've been to Japan, you go to these temples, you hear a lot of chanting. And the reason we do a lot of chanting also is that, and we can see this also in the precepts, Sanmitsu, mind, body, speech. So the body is, first of all, embodiment. And so we do hands-on healing, very much touching the body. Then we have the mind, but the mind is super subtle, very difficult. We can't grasp it like the body. We cannot smell the mind. We cannot hear it, right? It's very subtle. But the breath or speech is in between mind and body. So in many traditions, no matter if you look at Hinduism, shamanism, Buddhism, old Christianity, there's forms of chanting to help you to make that link between mind and body, body and mind. So these mantras, we can actually chant. And again, in some traditions in Japan, they do it, and some in traditions, they don't do it. We also have to be aware of, for example, Mrs. Takata wrote in her diary, and no, actually she didn't write in it. It was in a conversation was with some tapes, and she said that she went to Japan and met with traditional Japanese Reiki teachers. She said it was a very long study. It was highly intertwined with Japanese spiritual practices, right? And difficult, right? So Mikasui trained many different people. And one of them where we know a lot through is Hayashi. But Hayashi only trained for 10 months with Mikasui, and then Mikasui passed away. So if we look at this, then that is not a very long time, right? So we also can therefore see that within the Japanese system of Reiki, we see differences coming out of Japan already. For example, Yakuta Ninomoto sometimes has said in the past that actually what we practice in modern system is more Hayashi's Reiki than Mikasui's Reiki. And why? Because traditionally it was a practice for, first of all, self-development. And so these mantras, what we can chant, were for self-development. So again, one is not really better than the other, as long as we can say that through the practice, we embody more and more and more the precepts in our daily life. But I think mantras is very important, particularly when we know what they're pointing at. It helps us with the deep breathing, focusing on the hara or the tanden, all of these very important elements within Mikusui's teachings, and therefore, I think very essential. Of course, we can say, was it there or was it not there? Highly debatable. Like there is much in Mikusui's teachings what is highly debatable. But if we keep debating, we don't practice. So better to practice, better to, and this is always what I say, don't believe me, right? Use these symbols and mantras. I teach you how to do it. Then go home, chant these mantras, work and internalize these symbols. And if you do this once a day for a year, then tell me it worked or it doesn't work. And this is how we can taste it for ourselves. So this is important from particularly if we look at traditional Japanese teachings. Then the student would learn something, they would go home, they would practice, they would stay in touch with their teacher, and then the teacher would say, adjust it a little bit like this, they help you, and that the student had a very direct experience of being Reiki. This was my teacher still teaches like this. And these traditional teachers in Japan still teach like that. Very, very important. So it's not that, oh, we throw a symbol around or we say the word once or we only get an attunement and then that's it. But in fact, it was a very dedicated personal practice. And we can see this also in Mikusui's teachings. He only trained 2,000 people. And there were people at that time who taught hands-on healing who had almost like 100,000 students, 200,000 students, 500,000 students. So Mikusui was a very small fish, because his main focus was, first of all, yourself, your first self-development, satori.
Regarding these kotodamas or chanting the mantras, do you know anything if they are used within the Usureiki Ryoho Gakkai that still exists?
I don't think they're used like that. And we also have to remember that the Usui Reiki Gakkai was set up by the more Navy arm and students of Mikasui. So Mikasui at that time was not only just teaching Navy, but he was also teaching monks and nuns and other people. So and we can see this same within, for example, yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong. Many different forms exist. Some quite different than the other. And that's okay too. But again, like I always say like this, essentially, while we go for a restaurant, we go to eat a meal to fill our bellies. And then we have a Chinese, we have Japanese, we've got Thai, we've got Dutch, we've got Swedish food. But the essential is to fill our bellies. Sometimes now we go debate, oh, but Chinese food is better than this and this is better than that. And then we debate about it and then we get all caught up. But if there is no food at all available, and we know certain countries these days where that isn't, then we would not care what kind of food we're being served. We're not going to be picky, right? We just eat it because it will know it sustains us. So in Japanese teachings, they say, practice like your hair is on fire. I'm not sure if you ever seen someone with their hair on fire. It burns really quickly. It's super dangerous. So you have to be fast. Why do they say this? Because we don't know when we're going to pass away. We think we live for the rest of our life, but that's not true. We can maybe not wake up tomorrow morning. We don't know. So better to practice now. And this is a problem I think we see these days within the system of Reiki, where most of the time we keep debating about was this a traditional or not traditional, like this or this. I don't really do this in my classes. I don't actually talk even about the history of the system of Reiki. Like if I go for a yoga retreat, what do? We practice yoga. Very little is said about the history. We learn about concept, the mind space. If I go for a Tai Chi weekend, what do? We practice. If I go for a Reiki weekend, if I just learn about the history and debate the history, and history will be debatable. For example, if you teach 20 different people to teachers, they will start to teach 20 different things according to their understanding, their philosophy, their way of being. So we already see then differences. Who is right? As long as they can help you to understand that you are Reiki, that you can live a life of no anger, no worry, being grateful, being true to your way and your being, and being compassionate, then we're successful.
Yeah.
So this is for me a very important thing. Of course, we can say, what is traditional Reiki? In one way, it doesn't exist because we don't know. And Mikasui, again, there's very little known. We have the precepts. This is one very well-known thing. We have meditation practices like Joshin Kokuho, Seisin Toitsu, Hatsureiho. We have these mantras and these symbols. We've got hands-on healing. And therefore, if we look at these elements, then we can actually investigate. And if we put these elements over the time that Mikasui was alive, right? Then we can, for example, in Mikasui's time, there was a lot of Kotodama practices. Why? Because the Meiji Emperor was a fan of Kotodama. So Kotodama was being revived again. Many Zen teachers at that time, and remember, Mikasui was also practicing Zen, were practicing Kotodama. So also in Buddhism, lots of mantra practices. So most important, we can say, is it beneficial for me? Yes or no. Does it help me to calm my mind? Yes or no. Many, many years ago, one of my teachers said, Frans, does actually debating the history of Reiki help you to embody the precepts or not? And I thought about it before I answered him. And I said, in fact, I thought about it for a few days before I answered you. And I said, in fact, not really. Is it? Indeed. Most important is sit on your butt and do the practice. So this is the most important element because there will always be different ideas of historical viewpoints. And we all know this. Imagine you and I go to a party, right? And 30 years later, 10 people of this party come together. We all have a different viewpoint. Also, time changes how we think about things, how we feel about things, etc. So we have a different viewpoint. Who is right? They're highly debatable. But if we therefore keep practicing sitting on our butt, then we come to a very different conclusion. And for me, this is the most important thing. Sit on your butt and do the practice. Internalize it. Again, in these traditional organizations, the mind of Kami, the mind of Buddha, going into the hara. Like Joshin Kokuyo, Seisin Toitsu, Hatsureho, as Mrs. Takada pointed out, the hara, what in Tomita pointed out, that Reiki is from the hara. It comes from within your own mind, body, energy. And then we can start to really feel and sense it. And then when we do this, and when we keep practicing like this, then we also slowly start to feel that we soften this debate within ourselves of what is right, traditional or not traditional. Why? Because we feel a calmness, we feel an inner peace, and we realize history will always be debatable.
Of course. And it's one thing if you don't talk about that in your trainings, but it's another thing if you talk about that here, because here this is something that many people is wondering about. What is the
Yeah.
difference? Which form of Reiki should I choose, etc., etc. And I know about one, I won't say the name of it, but one of the Reiki assistants says that it's an upgrade of Reiki. What do you think about an upgrade of Reiki?
I mean, again, when we look at the word Reiki, traditionally, the word Reiki Kami or Buddha, right? And again, Mikasui said this in this question and answer thing in a booklet what is handed out by the Usui Reiki Gakkai. Now, traditionally, what is Kami and Buddha is non-duality. So if I really feel this non-dual nature within myself, then there is no higher or lower. There is no higher frequency or lower frequency because then I'm talking in a very dualistic way. And if I keep practicing in a very dualistic sense, then also I'm watering duality. And we all know, and we can see this also currently in the world situation, the more we water this duality, the more problems we have, the more wars we get, the more anger we have, the more worry we have. So traditionally, the whole system of Reiki is about non-duality, realizing I am Reiki, Reiki is me. Also, Mikasui said everything in the universe possesses Reiki. This is the non-dual state. And here is another thing. So again, what I give, water grows. If I water that Reiki is outside of myself, so I'm seeing it as something separate. Now I'm watering separateness. I'm watering separation. I'm watering duality. And the more I water that, the less compassion I have, because true compassion only is really visible when we realize this interconnectedness. So, for example, in many traditions, we put our hands in gasho. And gasho traditionally means uniting left and right. The deeper meaning of gasho is also non-duality. And so if I have my hands like this, and I say there is a higher or lower, then I already don't really understand what the gasho is pointing out. If I put my hands in gasho and I see something as Reiki is outside of me and have to bring it in me, then I also don't really understand the concept of gasho, because traditionally gasho in Zen, in Tendai, in Shugendo, all of these teachings, gasho is non-duality. So this is why we have to understand why we do the exercise and how we do it. If I only know the how, oh, you just put your hands like this, but I don't know the why, then I get only half of the truth. So the how is we put our hands together in a very specific way. The why is to realize I am the universe is me. I'm Buddha, Buddha is me. I'm Kami, Kami is me. This is traditionally Gasho from a traditional Japanese perspective. From a modern perspective, we say this and we see it dualistically. That is the modern way, but that's not the traditional way. So when we look at gasho and we do this in hands-on healing, then in fact, we should understand why we do it to realize I am Reiki, Reiki is me. No need to channel anything. I am my client is me. There is no higher or lower vibration because gasho is non-duality. So then we get a very different experience. And again, remember, what I water grows. So if I water constantly duality, my concept of duality grows. If I water within my practice non-duality, then in fact, kindness and compassion starts to grow. So we have to be very careful. So Mikasui actually points this out. He says, today, what are you watering? Are you watering anger? Are you watering worry? Are you watering fear? Or are you watering being grateful for the good and bad things, right? Are you watering being true to your way and your being? And are you watering a compassion what doesn't change according to circumstances? So this is important to understand. So we also have to understand why the precepts are there and then how we can work with the precepts to have this very direct experience. Imagine, very simple, if today everybody decide to be kind to each other, then today we have world peace. Now that is Reiki. And that for me is what Mikosu was really trying to establish.
Mm. So, in a little shorter answer to the question, is it then, in your point of view, possible to upgrade Reiki?
No.
Mm. Thank you. That's I like
And
that.
you
Mm.
know, again, because we used to have this is we have this wonderful teaching. So, for example, in Reiki 3, where there's a symbol and mantra, and within it is the sun in the symbol and the moon. So we cannot add more light to the sun. We cannot take light away. So we cannot upgrade it. We cannot also say there is less sun or more sun. Impossible. We can also not say there is less moon or more moon. Even if the moon is the light, we only see the sliver. The moon is still whole, right? So the moon and the sun means wholeness. So healing traditionally comes from the word whole, where we realize this wholeness. So it means if I feel I'm less Reiki or I'm more Reiki, that's our dualistic idea. We haven't tapped into the wholeness yet. When we tap into the wholeness, we realize we've always been like this. We didn't add more energy to our mind body energy. We just didn't see what we had. And this is the difference. So the more we practice, then we go, oh, I thought I added more energy to me. No, but then we say, shoot, this is not really the truth. This was my mistaken understanding. I'm like the sun. I was born like this. I was conceived like this with all the energy I need. And we can also not say, for example, now I practice and now I'm 60% the universe. And now I practice more and I'm 80% the universe. And now I stop practicing and I go back to 30% the universe. That is impossible. And we cannot step with one leg outside the universe. So we're always, no matter where we at, no matter if we're sick, no matter if we're dying, no matter if we have cancer, we're 100% the universe every single moment of the day. And this is what really Mikasui is saying. So then we cannot add more universe to the universe, or we cannot take more universe away from the universe. So the practices, like Joshin Kokyo says in Toitsu, and if you look at the translation of these practices, then we can clearly see that it is not about adding more energy to it, but actually realizing what you've been in the first place. Whole, pure. You've been already since you were conceived, 100% the universe.
I also have a question regarding, as I'm a member of the board in the Swedish Reiki Association, and we are working to get Reiki integrated as a complement within healthcare and society. So, what is your view of the role of that Reiki could play in future health and wellness?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, we see this already. I teach a lot in different countries where they already have hands-on healers, Reiki practitioners or teachers in hospitals. They pay them or palliative care. I think it's fantastic. The most important thing, though, is to make sure that for the practitioner or teachers who works in the healthcare, that they're very grounded, very centered, have a lot of self-practice, not just with hands-on healing, but with Joshin Kokiho, internalizing the symbols and mantras, because else we get nowadays we have doctors burnout and nurse burnout, then we get practitioners burnout, and that is not something what you want. So the pre-request, I think, for taking the system of Reiki more into the healthcare is making sure that the practitioner or teacher has a very strong daily self practice, not just with hands-on healing, but also with the symbols and mantras, thinking about the precepts, not to worry, for example, is a big one, and not to anger and being fearful. Because when we go into these settings, we come across people who've got lots of different illnesses. Maybe they're passing away. And if we take these things, for example, with us in our daily life, then very quickly the practitioner or teacher will be in a burnout. So we have to know and realize what we're doing and stabilizing that as our own personal development.
And finally, do you have any, what to say, final words or something you want to share with the people listening?
Yeah, for me, really, as much as possible, try to integrate the precepts in your daily life. For me, like the core here, there in Japanese, it is the core element of a healthy life, of a happy life. Imagine that today we have no anger, no worry, being grateful, being true to our inner being, and we're all being kind to each other. Now we have world peace. Wouldn't that be great? Hands-on healing is in a way very limiting because I cannot all the time do hands-on healing. I have to do my shopping, I have to work, I have to drive the car, etc. But I can carry with me the mindset of the precepts through practice in all I do. Then imagine that every single person does that today. We have today world peace. That for me is what Mikasui was really trying to point out, that we all being Reiki, same as being yoga. Yoga is not necessarily an asana, it's way more than that. It's the same as Tai Chi, it's not merely a movement, it's way more than that. They all talk about peace, inner joy. Imagine what kind of energy that will releases if we all like this, right? Tremendous. So for me, yeah, make sure as a Reiki practitioner or teacher, or maybe just starting off, really try to embody that today in your daily life. And Mikasui also said today. He doesn't say in 10 years' time. 10 years' time, I'm going to be less angry. And in 10 years' time, I'm finally going to be kind. Oh, that the future doesn't arrive, right? In in England, I teach in England sometimes, and they have these on these old pubs, tomorrow free beer. And then you come the next day and it still says tomorrow free beer. Tomorrow doesn't come today. So if today we can do this, then already being Reiki is the most profound thing.
That's a very nice thing to say, I think, and to be.
I think so, yeah.
Yes. So, is there anything else that you would like to add or?
No, keep practicing. Yeah, make sure you sit on your butt. Integrate it again and again and again and again. It sounds boring, but that's how we get the most benefit from it. It's not just the attunement or initiation or reiju, whatever we call it. It's actually the tools, what we integrate in our own being and pointing to being this great bright light, no matter if we call it Christ consciousness or Kami or Buddha nature, Satori, enlightenment, the embodiment of the precepts or being Reiki, these are all just words, right? But that we create a life of kindness. I think that's the most important.
So, I'm very happy to have you here so that we can take part of your point of view regarding Reiki. And yeah, I'll see you again.
Thank you. Have
Take
a
care.
wonderful day and yeah,
Yeah.
see you soon.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Okay, so now we have taken part of Frans Stiene's point of view regarding Reiki. It's always so inspiring hearing all these Reiki people talk. And you're welcome back to listen to some other Reiki talks where other interesting Reiki people are sharing their point of view. Thank you. Take care.